I flew to a different country to finally meet the woman I thought I'd build a future with. After a tearful first meeting and months of hope, I'm left alone, trying to understand how love, anxiety, and timing quietly pulled us apart. A couple of years ago, I met this girl, I'll call her Elle, through an online community. We were both 29 at the time, orbiting the same corners of the internet, sharing long-winded opinions on writing, film, and the usual existential frustrations about careers and purpose. It started innocently enough. Comments turned into messages, messages turned into threads that span time zones and sleep schedules. She was easy to talk to. One of those rare people who actually listened, who replied thoughtfully instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. She had this way of describing things that made everything seem more vivid, more alive. Her voice on the phone became a kind of anchor in my day. We talked about books we'd never finish writing, about our families, the strange winding paths that led us to where we were. Slowly, what had begun as a friendship started turning into something else. I don't remember when it shifted. Maybe it was gradual, those small pauses in conversation where the silence became charged. Or maybe it was sudden, like the first time she called me just to hear my voice, not because she had anything to say. By early last year, she admitted she had feelings for me. I remember the way her voice cracked just slightly over the phone when she said it. There was a pause before the words came out, the kind that held its breath, waiting for the world to either split open or stay still. I could feel the nerves in her silence. She thought it might change everything. And it did, but not in the way she feared. I told her I felt the same. Truthfully, I'd been hoping for that moment. It felt like we were just naming something that had already been there for a while. From then on, we drifted closer. More late-night calls. Movie nights over Zoom. Working silently on our own projects while staying connected on video, like we were sharing a space that didn't quite exist. There was a comfort to it, a kind of intimacy that felt both new and strangely familiar. Eventually, she started referring to me as her boyfriend. First to her coworkers, then her family. I didn't correct her. I cared about her deeply, and part of me liked the sound of it. But in the back of my mind, there was one condition I couldn't shake. I needed to meet her in person before fully settling into the idea of being in this. It wasn't about trust. Not really. It was just, I needed to feel it. In real life. The texture of it, the rhythm, the weight of a presence that can't be captured on a screen. You can only build so much through pixels and voice notes. At some point, the rest has to happen face to face. We talked about meeting up a few times. Given her anxiety and some health issues, it made more sense for me to visit her in Canada than for her to come to the States. So when Christmas rolled around, I decided that my gift to her, and maybe to us, would be a trip up north. I booked the flights, a hotel, took time off work. It wasn't cheap, but it felt important. Like a step worth taking. That trip happened this past weekend. I'm writing this from my hotel room now, a couple days in, having spent most of that time alone. When I landed, I texted her right away. I figured by the time I got settled at the hotel, she'd have mustered the courage to come over. She only lived 5 minutes away. But the hours passed. 2, then 3. She was spiraling from anxiety, she said. I tried to be patient. I told myself it was okay, that I just needed to give her time. Eventually, she made it. She walked into the hotel lobby trembling, crying. Not a few tears. This was full-on, chest heaving, can't breathe sobbing. I stood up, wrapped my arms around her. She clung to me like she was trying not to fall apart. I kept saying it was okay, that I was just glad she came. I meant it, even though the moment felt nothing like what I'd pictured. She apologized over and over, wiping her face, trying to calm herself down. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. We went to her place after that. She lived with her brother, who turned out to be pretty easygoing, friendly. We sat in their living room, the three of us, pretending like this wasn't the most awkward moment of all our lives. I tried to ask questions, tried to ease the tension, but I could see her folding in on herself. Her shoulders hunched, her gaze fixed somewhere past the furniture. She said she wanted to show me the city, that she had a few places she'd planned to take me, but she couldn't bring herself to drive. She looked so small in that moment, like a kid asking to go home early from a birthday party. After about an hour, she quietly suggested I should probably take an Uber back to my hotel. I nodded, told her it was fine, and then I left. The next morning, I was up extra early. She worked nights, so I knew she probably wouldn't be awake for a while. But still, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, watching the light shift on the hotel walls as the sun rose, trying to convince myself to be patient. I didn't know the city well, didn't have a car, didn't feel like wandering around solo again. So I stayed put, hoping that when she woke up, we'd finally get a second chance to connect. 4 hours passed before she messaged me. She apologized again, told me she still wasn't quite ready to see me yet, that the nerves were still there, that she hadn't slept well. I said I understood. I told her I'd go grab some things from a nearby drugstore. Maybe pick up some food for us from a local place I'd looked up. She said that sounded nice. It felt like progress. Not much, but enough to hold on to. By the time I got back to her place, I was tired but hopeful. I had some things she'd mentioned needing, and I brought back a couple meals from a spot that seemed well-reviewed.
She didn't eat, though.
Said she wasn't hungry. Her hands were still fidgeting, and her eyes kept darting away from mine. I tried not to take it personally. Then she mentioned her brother, her, and I were going to head out to a get-together, a casual party with some of their friends. I was surprised, but I played it cool. She seemed excited, more animated than I'd seen her since I arrived. I asked how long we'd be there, and she said a few hours. That sounded good. Maybe a chance to reset. A chance to see her in a space where she felt more herself. We piled into her brother's car and drove for about an hour. It was strange, sitting beside her but not touching, barely talking. But when we arrived, her demeanor shifted. Around her friends, she lit up, smiling, laughing, introducing me confidently as her boyfriend. Everyone was incredibly warm and welcoming. I appreciated it, truly. They didn't make me feel like an outsider. I had conversations, got pulled into group games, and even managed to have a few decent laughs. But I barely spoke to her. She was either surrounded by friends or caught up in something else. A board game. A conversation across the room. I tried to catch her eye a few times, to share a smile or a comment, but her attention kept slipping elsewhere. I kept telling myself it was fine. That she was just trying to give me a peek into her world. That this was her way of showing she cared, letting me meet the people who mattered. Around 10 p.m., we got ready to leave. I felt good. Optimistic even. She usually stayed up late, sometimes texting me at 2, 3, even 4 in the morning. I figured we'd head back to her place or to the hotel and finally have a few quiet hours together. Maybe talk, maybe just be in the same space without all the distractions. But as we climbed into her brother's car, she turned to him and asked, "Is it cool if I take him back to his hotel before we go home?" He said sure. And that was it. I sat there in silence for the entire drive, staring out the window, trying not to let it hit me too hard. But it did. The realization that she didn't want to spend even a couple more hours with me, not even in a no-pressure, low-stakes way, sank in slowly and deeply. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded when we pulled up to the hotel, said thanks, and went inside. Once I was back in the room, everything caught up with me. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of what the hell was going on. I was in another country. I had flown hundreds of miles, spent money, carved out time in my life, made space for her, and yet I felt more alone here than I had in months. I didn't want to message her. Not really. I worried that confronting her would only make her anxiety worse. But at that point, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. I felt like I'd met everyone but my girlfriend. I talked with her brother, her friends, and, the next day, I was set to meet her mom. Meanwhile, the person I came to see, the one I'd been building this relationship with, was like a shadow at the edges of the experience. So I messaged her.
Carefully. Gently.
I told her how I was feeling, confused mostly. Alone. I said I wasn't angry, just lost. That it was starting to feel like I had barely even seen her. She responded right away, very apologetic. Said her anxiety was through the roof. That she felt awful, that she had really hoped this trip would go differently. That she wanted to make it worth it for me. But she was drained. Completely. She told me again that she still had feelings, still wanted this to work, but being alone together felt like too much right now. She hadn't been in a relationship in years, she said.
She didn't know how to ease back into it.
Everything about this trip was overwhelming her. I told her I wasn't expecting anything intimate, far from it. I hadn't even really touched her, aside from a couple brief hugs. I said I just wanted time. Real, shared time. A walk, a meal, a conversation without an exit strategy. Something that could remind us both why we'd gotten to this point in the first place. She said she understood. She promised tomorrow would be better. After I met her mom for dinner, she said we'd have time. Just us. Quiet, no pressure. I wanted to believe her. I told her okay, that I'd hold her to that. And then I put my phone down and just sat there again, in that unfamiliar room, surrounded by unfamiliar walls, listening to the city move outside a window that didn't feel like mine. And then, yesterday morning, I woke up early again. This time it felt different, more final. I was heading home the next day, and whatever this trip had been, whatever it was, I knew I was at the end of it. I made the original post while the hotel room was still quiet, writing it out just to make sense of how I felt. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for in response. Maybe some perspective, maybe validation, maybe just someone to say, yeah, that sounds hard. I didn't even know. All I knew was that I felt twisted up. Hopeful and hurt, connected and distant, all at once. I waited nervously for her to wake up. The hours ticked by. Noon rolled around before I finally saw a message from her. She said we had dinner plans later that afternoon with her mom, and I could Uber over to her place whenever I was ready. Some people had told me I should skip it, just cut the trip clean, but I couldn't bring myself to do that. It didn't feel right. I wanted to see it through, for better or worse. So I grabbed my stuff, called a car, and went over. When I got to her place, things felt better. Calmer. She was having a good day. You could tell it right away. Her body language was more open, her voice less shaky. We sat close on the couch and watched some videos, a show or two. Nothing elaborate. Her brother was home, so it wasn't like we had privacy, but it was the kind of quiet, shared space I'd been craving since I got here. Nothing performative. No pressure. Just her and me in the same room, existing together. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Later, we went to dinner with her mom. I'll admit, I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect, especially after the emotional roller coaster of the last few days. But dinner turned out to be one of the best parts of the trip. Her mom was warm, kind, and asked thoughtful questions. We had an actual conversation, not just surface-level small talk, and she seemed genuinely excited for us. I could tell how much her daughter meant to her. When we left, she hugged me, and it felt sincere. Back at her place, the evening continued much the same way as earlier, low-key, casual. We didn't have the kind of private, drawn-out one-on-one time I might have imagined for the last night of the trip, but there was more closeness now. More comfort. And most importantly, more presence. We talked more, laughed a little easier, shared some music. She seemed lighter. I felt more grounded. As it got later, I half expected her to suggest I call an Uber again. But she didn't. She drove me herself. On the way to the hotel, we talked a little about my flight in the morning, about packing, and then she helped me double-check everything once we got there. When it was time to say goodbye, we stood in the hallway by the door, and it just happened, a kiss. Not dramatic. Not swept up in the moment. Just a quiet, real kiss goodbye.
Soft.
Familiar. A thread pulled taut after days of tension, finally loosening. Once I was back in the room, we texted for a bit. We were both kind of processing, I think. Then she remembered something. She hadn't taken a picture of us for a frame she had bought. It was supposed to be a keepsake. Something to mark the trip. She was disappointed, and honestly, so was I. The few photos we did have didn't really match the mood she was going for. I made a half-joking comment that I should just Uber back real quick. I waited for a reply, not expecting much. 10 minutes later, she told me to come downstairs. No hesitation. No delay. Anxiety be damned. She'd gotten back in the car and driven to the hotel just for a photo, and another goodbye kiss. That moment hit different. Not because it was big or cinematic, but because it felt like a choice. A real, deliberate act of showing up, despite everything. So no, it wasn't the perfect weekend. Not even close. There were times I felt invisible. Times I sat in silence, feeling like I had made a massive mistake. Times I questioned whether I'd flown all this way just to be a supporting character in someone else's life. But there were also moments of warmth. Glimpses of why I had fallen for her in the first place. And yesterday, finally, there was that small act of effort that reminded me this wasn't one-sided. That maybe she was trying. Maybe not in the way I needed every time, but in the way she could manage right now. Looking back, I think the trip should have been longer. I underestimated how much time it would take for her to feel safe, to move through the fog of anxiety and into something closer to comfort. I don't blame her for that. I've dealt with anxiety too. I know it's not rational. I know it doesn't care about plane tickets or perfectly timed plans. Still, there's a part of me that's guarding itself. Staying cautiously optimistic. Because the truth is, effort matters. And moving forward, especially with long distance, the weight of that effort has to fall on both of us. We'll see what happens next. She mentioned she might visit for an event this summer. That'll be her first solo trip in a long time. If she makes that choice, it'll mean something. I'm not naive. I know how complicated this is. But I also know how rare it is to connect with someone who truly shares your passions, your rhythms, your sense of humor. My last relationship taught me that shared interests matter.
Deeply.
They're the difference between coexisting and actually building something together. And despite everything, I still believe there's something worth building here. Maybe it's fragile. Maybe it's slow. But it's not gone. The last 2 months were a mix of warmth and silence. After that first trip, I felt like we had turned a corner. There was this slow, steady softening in her. She opened up about how hard the meetup had been, how much pressure she had put on herself, how sorry she was that things didn't go the way either of us had hoped. I could tell she meant it. And for a little while, everything felt right again. We spent nights on call, side by side through video screens, writing, talking about the books we were reading, playing around with silly inside jokes we'd built up over time. There were moments where it almost felt like the distance didn't matter. Like we had found our rhythm again. Like we were, in some strange way, closer after having weathered that awkward, uneven visit. But something had changed. I could feel it even if I didn't want to name it. It wasn't distance, not the physical kind. Anyway, it was something more intimate that had slipped away. The flirtation, the spark, that private language that lives in a space just between two people in love, it wasn't there anymore. It had dulled, faded, like someone had quietly turned the volume down on a part of us. And it wasn't an accident. She told me herself that she wanted to tone things down, especially the more flirty, sexual side of our relationship. Her reasoning made sense. She didn't want to express things online that she wasn't sure she could carry over into real life. She said it didn't feel fair to either of us. That she needed to feel that safety and comfort in person before those parts of herself could come out again. I respected it. I really did. That kind of vulnerability takes courage, and I admired her for drawing a boundary she needed to feel safe in. I didn't want to push her or guilt her. I wanted her to know that I was in it for the long haul, not just for the good days or the sexy moments, but for all of it. For her. But somewhere in that shift, things started to unravel. It was subtle at first, just a little more space between replies, a shorter tone during calls. Then whole days where I'd barely hear from her at all. Sometimes she'd message back hours later, apologizing and explaining she was overwhelmed, stressed, or just needed space. And I tried to understand. I told myself it wasn't about me. That everyone copes in their own way. That her independence, one of the things I had admired about her early on, just looked different in hard times. But it wasn't just space. It was absence. Silence that didn't feel peaceful, but punitive. She would go quiet on days when she felt low, and I get that, but when I tried to step in and be a source of comfort, it was like I was hitting a wall. My affection met coldness. My care met deflection. I didn't know what version of her I was going to get each day. And that kind of inconsistency starts to wear you down in small, invisible ways. About a week ago, she was having one of those bad stretches. I knew it from the moment I woke up and saw the empty message threads. No good morning. No check-in. Just quiet. I tried to reach out gently, told her I was here if she needed anything, that I hoped her day was manageable. But when she replied, it was clipped. Dismissive. Like even kindness was too much to process. I tried again later in the evening, offered to hop on a call, maybe just sit quietly and share some space. She said no, she needed time. She needed quiet. I told myself again, be patient. She's going through something. But that night, alone in my apartment, staring at my phone, I hit a limit I hadn't seen coming. I started typing. I didn't plan it. I didn't map out what I was going to say. I just opened up. Told her that I was struggling to understand what she needed from me. That I wanted to be there for her, but I didn't know how, because every time I tried to offer support, I was pushed away. I told her the truth, that sometimes, in the moments I most wanted to feel connected, I felt instead like I was standing outside her life, knocking on the door, and being told to come back later. I said I didn't want to pressure her or make her feel guilty, but that I couldn't keep walking this path blindfolded. That the silence, the coldness, left me second-guessing everything. And that I wasn't saying this to ask her to change who she was, only to let me in. To trust me enough to share the weight of what she was carrying. I hit send. The message sat there for a while, unread. And in that time, I sat with the weight of what I'd done. I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to fix her. I just wanted to be seen. Wanted her to know that I was hurting too. Eventually, she read it. But the response didn't come that night. And in the hours that followed, I realized something painful. Even love, when it isn't shared evenly, can start to feel like a burden. Even care, when it isn't received, can begin to feel like rejection. I didn't regret what I said. I meant every word. But I knew the conversation ahead of us, if it came at all, was going to shape what came next. The last few days leading up to the trip had felt like the upswing we needed. After that difficult week, the quiet tension, and my message that had come from a place of confusion and vulnerability, we finally started having the conversations we'd avoided for months. The real ones, the ones that peeled back the layers of affection, expectation, and fear to get at what was actually happening between us. It wasn't easy. We both had our guards up. There were moments where we danced around the truth, hesitant to admit what we wanted, afraid it might not align. But slowly, those walls came down. Message by message, call by call, we talked about what a relationship looked like to each of us, not just in the good times, but in the uncertain ones. And more importantly, what our relationship had turned into. She told me how much she cared about me, how deeply she valued what we had, how rare it was for her to feel that kind of connection with someone. But she also admitted something harder, that her anxiety was devouring her life from the inside out. Not just in how it affected me, or us, but in how it stole her energy, her joy, her ability to function in almost every area. She told me how she sometimes felt like she was drowning, and the thought of failing someone she cared about only added to the weight pulling her under. So we made a compromise, one that felt like both a promise and a new beginning. She would prioritize herself, her health, and the very real work of healing. I would give her the space to do that, even if it meant pulling back a bit, even if it meant resisting every instinct I had to close the distance between us. I told her I understood, that I could wait, that I wanted to wait, because I believed in her, and I believed in us. I reminded myself that healing isn't linear, that love is sometimes choosing patience over immediacy, that space doesn't always mean distance, and time apart doesn't always mean the end. So when I boarded the plane, I was hopeful. Not naive, not unrealistic, just hopeful. The kind of hope that's weathered disappointment and still chooses to believe that people can grow. That the story isn't over just because it's taken a detour. We had talked about the trip in the days leading up to it. She seemed unsure at first, but slowly warmed up to the idea. She said she was excited to see me again, that this time would be different. I believed her. Not because I needed to, but because she sounded like she wanted to believe it too. The flight was short, but I spent it running through every possible version of how it could go, every scenario from worst case to picture perfect. And somehow, I had managed to land somewhere in the middle, emotionally prepared for just about anything. Except for what I actually got. My phone buzzed the second the plane touched down. I had barely stood to grab my bag when I saw her name flash across the screen. I smiled instinctively, thumb already reaching to open the message. But the second I started reading, my stomach sank. It wasn't long. Maybe 4 or 5 sentences.
But they hit like a punch to the chest.
She said she'd done a lot of thinking. That over the last couple of days, she realized how unwell she still was. That she wasn't in a place where she could be the kind of partner I deserved, or any kind of partner at all. That the trip we'd talked about, the one we'd started to look forward to again, would only end the same way as before, with her feeling paralyzed and me feeling alone. She couldn't bear the thought of putting us through that again. So she was stepping back. Not out of malice. Not because she didn't care. But because, in her words, it's the kindest thing I can do for both of us right now. I must have stood frozen in the aisle of the plane for longer than I realized, because the man behind me cleared his throat impatiently. I muttered an apology and stepped into the aisle, still staring at the message, rereading it as if the meaning would change.
It didn't.
I walked through the airport in a haze. No destination, no plan. Just movement. I think part of me was hoping she'd change her mind, that I'd get another message saying, "I'm sorry, I panicked. Can we talk?" But nothing came. The silence this time felt final. I didn't even get to reply for a while. What could I say? That I understood? That I was proud of her for choosing herself, even if it broke my heart? That I didn't regret any of it, even the hardest parts? Eventually, I just wrote, "I still believe in you. I hope someday, when you believe in yourself too, our timing lines up again." She sent a heart emoji. That was the last message I got. Now, sitting here in the terminal, surrounded by strangers headed to places they chose to go, I'm not sure what to feel. There's grief, sure, but also something else. A strange, quiet clarity. This wasn't about me not being enough. And it wasn't about her not caring. It was about timing, about capacity, about what love looks like when it isn't ready to land. The part that hurts the most, it isn't the time I gave her. Not the money I spent, not the effort I poured in, not even the long nights I sat on video calls with a smile plastered across my face when inside I was falling apart. It's not the distance I traveled, the plans I made, or the dreams I tied so tightly to this person I thought I was building a future with. What really hurts, what guts me, is the whiplash. The emotional whiplash of being someone's future, their person, their love, and then waking up one day and feeling like a stranger. Like an afterthought. Like an inconvenience in a life that, until recently, felt like it was just beginning to make space for me. I remember how, in the early days, she said that words meant everything to her. That she didn't say things lightly. That if she told me something, I could believe in it. And I did. God, did I believe in it? She said she loved how easy it was to be open with me. She said I made her feel safe, understood. She told me I was the kind of person she could see herself with long-term. She talked about the future like it wasn't just possible, but inevitable. That we were on the path together, and all we had to do was give it time.
But now?
Now, she barely talks to me at all. The day I landed, the day that was supposed to be a continuation of our story, was instead the day I got that message. That message that ended everything but didn't even say it in those words. No, goodbye. No, I love you. No, thank you for trying. Just a blunt admission that she couldn't do this. That she needed to work on herself, and that there was no room left for us in that process. We talked for a bit after that. But the conversation wasn't about us. It was about her healing. About her needs. Her space. Her journey. And I sat there, nodding along, trying to understand, trying to be supportive while inside, my chest was caving in. Because how do you respond to someone who once told you that you were everything, when now, they can't even look you in the eye? How do you find closure when the other person won't give you anything to close with? She says she wants to stay close. That she still cares. But when I reach out, it's like texting a ghost. The warmth is gone. The connection, frayed. It's small talk now, dry, brief, distant. Like we never stayed up till 4 a.m. laughing. Like we never built a playlist together. Like we never whispered about what it'd be like to wake up in the same bed. I see her online, see her laughing in photos, hanging out with friends, posting updates like life is perfectly fine. And I don't want to resent her. I don't. But it's hard not to feel erased. Like I was just one more page in a chapter she'd rather skip over. A footnote. An experiment in closeness she regrets. And me? I'm here. In this place I once flew to with so much hope in my chest it felt like a second heartbeat. Alone again. Watching strangers pass by. Staring out the hotel window at a city I was supposed to explore with her hand in mine. I keep telling myself I'll make the most of the trip. That I won't let this pain define every moment of it. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't haunted. By what could have been. By what we were. By how fast it all fell apart. Some days, the distance between us felt like nothing. Like I could reach through the screen and feel her hand. Like miles didn't matter, because love could stretch across oceans. But other days, she made the miles feel longer. With every ignored message. Every short reply. Every, I just need space today. I tried to be patient. I was patient. I gave everything I could, right up until the end. And now that it's over, I'm not even angry. I'm just tired. I'm getting older. That pressure to find my person is heavier now. It presses on my chest in quiet moments and screams in my ears when I'm alone. I don't want to settle. But sometimes, I wonder if I'll have a choice. Because loving someone this deeply, this intentionally, this wholeheartedly, it doesn't come easy for me. And now I'm scared I've used up something I might never get back. All I want is to make things right with her. To go back to that week before things cracked and just give her the space she wanted. To take a breath instead of speaking out of worry. To take the trip together and let things heal in the quiet. I keep replaying those days over and over in my mind, like maybe I'll find the thread I pulled that unraveled it all. But even now, even as I write this, I know this probably can't be saved. Not as it was. And maybe not at all. Still, I can't help but wish it could. Because she was one of a kind. Kind, funny, artistic, weird in all the right ways. We clicked in ways I didn't think were possible. And even now, even with the silence and the pain and the goodbye that wasn't, I'd still take her call if she made it. I'd still meet her halfway, without hesitation. But she won't. And I know that. So now I'm left asking myself, how do I move on? I don't have a clean answer. I'm still in the thick of it. Still waking up and checking my phone, half hoping for a message that won't come. Still hearing her voice in my head at night. Still caught somewhere between heartbreak and healing. Maybe the first step is accepting that closure won't always come from the person who hurt you. Maybe it's something you build for yourself, piece by piece, in the quiet moments. When you take back your energy.
When you let yourself cry.
When you tell yourself, not them, that you're still worthy of love. And how do I find someone like her again? I don't know. Maybe I don't need to. Maybe the next person won't be like her, but they'll meet me where I am, as I am. Without running. Without needing to retreat into themselves every time life gets heavy. Maybe I won't have to earn every scrap of affection. Maybe I won't have to beg for closeness. I still believe in love. I believe in effort. I believe in the kind of connection that's both tender and resilient. And I believe that someday, maybe not soon, maybe not easily, I'll find it again. But for now, I'm going to grieve this. Fully. Honestly. Because if this story deserves anything, it's to be mourned for what it almost was. And then one day, I'll let it go. But not today. Today, I just miss her.